All right, guys, so this video is going to be about ticks and mosquitoes and how to pick a good article if you're doing scientific research. So right now there's a big trend on the internets where people are like, well, I did my own research and that's why I know that the coronavirus isn't really that bad. The coronavirus is really bad and there really isn't very much research about it yet. It's increasing like phenomenally because of course we're experiencing a pandemic and so everybody wants to know more about it, but you really can't go on the internet and do research about most things. When it comes to a disease, what you'd have to do is, if you're going to do real research, like you have to set up experiments and stuff. So please be careful of people that are like, well, I researched it on the internet or the internet says blah, 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 because a lot of times that's like, it's basically like fake news. It's just incomplete information and it's not always a good way to make a decision. So when it comes to science, you have to listen to the scientists because they are deep in the research. So this is an article that I know is talking about what the scientists are saying, because if you look down at the bottom, it has the sources that they used. And these are good sources that actually have the authority to speak on these scientific matters. For example, the CDC is the Center for Disease Control, and then there's also the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, and then there's these other studies that I looked at, and they're good science. So this article is basically like a report about research. That's what's in this article. Okay, you probably don't have too much experience with ticks if you've lived in Las Cruces your whole life. Maybe one of your dogs has gotten ticks, but ticks can spread a lot of diseases. One of the diseases that they spread is called Lyme disease, and then mosquitoes can also carry diseases that's like West Nile virus or the Zika virus, and so we really care where mosquitoes and ticks are living. In Las Cruces, there's not that many ticks unless you're like going hiking maybe in the mountains after it's rained a lot. Like it's possible you could get a tick. But there's other parts of the country where it's like really humid and you can get a tick all the time. Okay, this is an embarrassing Mr. Arneson story. Are you ready? So Mr. Arneson grew up in Arkansas for a few years, and he says he remembers like every time he went out to play, his mom had to pick ticks off of him. And sometimes they would crawl in his crack, in his butt crack. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awful. So ticks are really annoying if they're around you, but we don't really have that big of a problem with them here right now. This article, though, is about how there's increased distributions of mosquitoes and ticks. So mosquitoes and ticks are moving to more places. Distribution means like, where are they? So they're increasing where they are. Okay, so here's some information about some diseases. What I really want to look at here is these maps. So here is one map, changes in Lyme disease case report distribution. So every one of these little dots is representing a Lyme disease case. So somebody was diagnosed with Lyme disease. It's kind of hard to figure out where bugs are because bugs are so small and like they don't obey rules, like they don't go through a gate. So one of the ways that we can track them is by looking at people that contract diseases they carry. So if we look back at 2001, you can see there's a really high amount of getting Lyme disease diagnosis right here. And then there's like some little spots, like it looks like Minnesota. I think this is Minneapolis, has quite a few cases right here. It's very humid here. But if we look at 2014, the range of these cases and the number of cases has dramatically increased. So there's a lot more people getting Lyme disease, which we know that Lyme disease is caused by a certain type of tick. So we know that those ticks are moving into these areas more and more and more. Okay, here's another one about West Nile virus. I really love maps. They tell you so much information. So here's a series of maps. We got 2010, 11, 12, and 13. And there's a key on this one showing us how many cases are being diagnosed in these counties. So West Nile virus isn't as prolific as Lyme disease, like you're not going to have as many people getting it. But if we look at this map, we have more and more people getting it because the darker the color is, the more people diagnosed with the disease. So as we look at this, we can see like here, it's mostly in the southern United States that we have the most cases. And then it starts moving north. And by the time we get over here, we have a really high amount of these black counties up here in the northern part of the United States. So in both of these cases, the range of the mosquito and the tick is increasing. I want to note, just because this is important, these places right here get really, really, really cold in the wintertime. So usually, a lot of bugs can't survive winters that are too cold. And then this place in the coastal area is going to be warmer generally. So as these things are moving, I want you to notice, because there's an indicator that as time goes on, these things are moving into places north and further inland, which are going to have a lot of differences in climate. Okay, that was all I wanted to say about this. So now there's some questions on your worksheet for lesson 2. Go ahead and get started on those.